Hello everyone, welcome back. This is B-Belt Dan and we are constructing the Akira class starship in Blender. Kind of picking up where we last left off. Actually, I was going to be doing a lot more work off screen, but what I decided to go ahead and do is, since a lot of y'all are kind of looking at these as more of a tutorial sense, I figured I'd show y'all a couple little tips and tricks and stuff that I have kind of learned. This trick that I'm going to show y'all today is kind of stemming from the fact that I've done some pretty poor planning ahead while I was modeling this, because I said in the last episode that I was going to start taking a lot of the details that I modeled over here, a couple of these little like little additions over here that are not on this nacelle, and mirror it. Normally what I should have done is modeled everything along the center axis of the scene, and from there I would put a mirror modifier and move everything over here. So as it model it over here, it changes over here. Well, I did not do that. I modeled everything over to here. So I could do a control D and duplicate everything and move it over here. But if I make any changes to on one side, they will not reflect on the other side. So that's why I use the mirror modifier when I'm doing this. So I can kind of go through and see how things look on the ship, but make changes only in one spot, and it'll duplicate on the other side. The problem is that I encountered, and we're going to use this piece right here. Let me go ahead and um, okay, like if several different things. Like if I was to go ahead and put the mirror modifier right here, well, it modifies it so I can go into edit mode and move everything around. But as you can see, it doesn't, because the center point, that little dot right there is right there. So it moves everything in relation to that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do instead is let's go into right here where it goes into object mode. So right here we have the locations and rotations of everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first write down the x-axis and the x rotation. So we got x equals 1.52817, and the x rotation is 90 degrees. Should be pretty easy to remember. And this one is, I'll show you again because this one might not necessarily be the best example, but anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm in object mode, zero that out. As you can see, we'll actually move this to where we're looking at it from the back. It moves it along into this mode here, so it puts it into the zero. And now this one, actually, I could probably just go ahead and just move it over. And what I want to do is now into edit mode, tell it to where I want that. Whoops. Whoops. Okay, see, this x-axis is not going to change, but if you do a G and an X, you can see right there along the bottom, right there, we see some numbers. That's about the distance in Blender units that we are moving this along that x-axis. So if I was to go ahead and plug in those numbers, so if I was to type in 1.52817 and then hit enter, bam, it moves everything over to that side. And it should mirror perfectly over onto that side as well. Now, every once in a while, you're going to have an issue to where, and let me see if I can find one. I think this might be one of those. Let me see. Okay, yeah, this is going to be where you need that rotation, because now see if I go here and I go and move along the x-axis, see what it's doing here? That is because this little center point has been completely rotated to where the x-axis is along here, y-axis is along there, so on and so forth. I've rotated the entire thing. So what I need to do instead is go back into object mode, go into here, and I need to go ahead and zero out this number here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into here and rotate, do an RY, and I'm going to plug in that number that we has, which was negative 39.105. And voila, there we go. So it rotates it. It rotates only the vertices, not necessarily the whole object, but just those selected vertices and faces and everything. And it matches what it was, what the object was originally rotated under. So now if I go ahead and go into G and X and I put in 1.51670, it should have moved everything over to that side and back over to that side as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do this real quick on all the others and cut right back in. But that was a little trick that I kind of learned. So if you model it on one side, but you want to copy everything to the other side, rather than do a Control D and move everything over, just zero everything out onto your x-axis and zero out your x, zero out your any rotations that you have into it, but write those numbers down, go into edit mode, apply the modifier, and then do either the G, X, or rotate Y, Z, whatever rotations that you had to delete into edit mode, and then you should be able to go ahead and have it to where the object is centerized along the plane that you're working with. And any changes that I make now over to this side here will reflect on, as you can see right over here, the other side. So a cool little trick that I kind of learned. Normally what I should have been doing, once again, is put everything along the zero of the x-axis and then do it a mirror modifier and move everything over. So, but if you forget to do that, then you can just go ahead and do this little trick. So let me go ahead and move everything over and I'll be right back and we'll start our regular episode. And okay, everybody, went ahead and got everything modeled over from one side to the other and starting to look more and more like a ship as we continue on with this. And so with that, we are going to go ahead and move on to the saucer section. Now, taking a look at a picture, which I'm looking at right now, y'all can't really see it. There's a lot going on here in the saucer section, a lot more than I originally thought now that I'm looking closer at this and analyzing it, getting ready to model it. I mean, it has your standard features, windows, which I've decided I'm going to go ahead and model each one of those in, because if I went ahead and did on the catamarans, I might as well go ahead and do it on the saucer section. They have lifeboats, all your standard type stuff, phaser strips and things. Now this ship is a transport carrier, so there's pictures for the back because there's a docking doors in the back, but there's also docking doors in the front. It's almost as if the ship was kind of designed to where a shuttles and stuff can fly through the ship. So we're going to be modeling that in, maybe not necessarily the interior. Of course, it would be kind of cool. Well, I might model some of the interior, so if we ever decide to do shots of the ship where the doors are open up, you can kind of look in and see. And there are pictures online, not of the official ship, but from the designers of the ship, that kind of gives you an idea of what the interior docking bays look like. So I might be using those. But let's go ahead and, also plus, oops, wrong one. Also looking at it, it looks like that those catamaran hulls kind of almost recess a bit into the saucer section, which kind of goes on with my idea of a potential saucer separation for this ship. And without, kind of like further ado, let me show you what that kind of looks like. That's kind of what it will look like. I haven't modeled the inside of this, but I kind of got the idea when I was playing Star Trek Dominion Wars, because this ship was used inside that video game, and there was a time where as your ship took damage, you'd see bits and pieces of it fall off. And with the Akira class, there would be a part where if you damaged it enough, you wouldn't hardly ever see the saucer section. So you'd just see this little piece flying around, and with just little bits and pieces of the hull kind of sticking, or the saucer section sticking off. And I thought, that kind of almost looks like that would be a good little quote unquote saucer separation. Now, what the, and it makes sense because, this has, impulse engines, but so does the saucer section has their own separate impulse engines. Now, this would be more of a kind of a true saucer separation, because the saucer separation, unlike with the Enterprise D or most of the other enterprises, where when the saucer separates, you know, it would take with it the original bridge and all that type of stuff with it. This one would be set up in such a way to where it would have its own separate bridge on the saucer itself. So when it separates, you'd have a secondary bridge on that, and that could fly away. And then this piece right here, which carries, of course, most of the photon torpedoes, would still continue to fire and everything. And this would just drift off using impulse engines. So with that, I'm going to try to keep in mind moving forward to actually try to design the recessed areas of this saucer section to make it look like it can indeed separate. Now, this is not in any way or form canon to what the Akira class is supposed to do. I don't know if it was ever intended to have a saucer separation, but for my model, that is what I'm going to do. So once again, that's what it looks like, just the battle section with a couple little details that I'm going to need to put in, maybe some phaser strips or what have you, and connection points and stuff along the bottom. And there's the saucer section where I'm going to have to model in a secondary bridge and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and get started. Now this saucer section does not have any kind of modifiers except for the mirror modifiers. And from this moving on, I'm probably going to go ahead and let's add in a subdivision surface modifier. Now that kind of messes up the edges, so let me go ahead and go in and kind of clean out some of this and sharpen up a bit of these edges here real quick, and I'll be right back. Actually, I'm going to cut back in because I know I probably explained this in previous episodes before, but I always think it kind of bears a bit repeating. Is when you work with trying to, clean up the mesh after you apply a subdivision surface on it. Oh, excuse me. As you clean up, you have one of two ways that you can do this. You can either add in more edge loops, which it looks like this. So I can go in and do this, which, so let's say if I want to clean up this area here, this front area where the saucer section, or not the saucer section, the forward facing shuttle bay is going to be, I can either go in and add in extra edge loops. So I can do that and do that and do that and do that, and that can clean it up. And that actually does a remarkably good job with it. The problem is that it adds in a whole bunch of different extra little vertices. So when you go in, you got to be careful that you're selecting, the correct vertices. As you see, there's two vertices occupying the same spot. Now you could click on this icon here in subdivision surfaces, and that will kind of help spread them out a little bit. And then once you go ahead and apply the modifier, just go in and tell it to remove any doubles. And so these that are kind of intersecting each other will be, not intersecting. What am I looking at? These two vertices that are combined together like that will be removed. The other method that you can do, let me see if it'll let me do it. There we go. Is you can just select different edges. Now this won't add any additional vertices or edges or anything into your mesh, but you could just select these and do Shift E and tell it, okay, I want those edges to be marked sharp. Now the only downside to that is that it kind of almost reverts it back to your pre subdivision surface modifier to where like this is a more straight edge, this is a more straight edge. So it kind of gives it a bit more of a boxy look. So with that, and the reason about why I'm doing a lot of this off screen is because this is a bit of a kind of a trial and error here, trying to go through to figure out exactly what spaces do I want to try to yeah, you can probably see what I'm talking about. Yeah, see how it goes one to, you can see how that looks very boxy. It's no longer smooth, which is what I want over here. It's now boxy. That's like before the subdivision surfaces. So I got to kind of go through all of this and, kind of try all those different um, options to see, because some areas I can get away with just using this method, Shift E. Others I'm going to have to go through and add in different edge loops, because if I go in and add in the edge loops there, it rounds it out and gives it a much smoother look. But once again, I got to have extra edges and vertices and stuff that I'm going to have to deal with. Um, so either way, I could do one or the other. It's kind of up to y'all to decide which one you want to do. And so I usually kind of do a bit of a hybrid. But let me go ahead and get this done, and I'll be right back. And after about 30 minutes of kind of tinkering around, toying around, I think I've got it. As we can see here, let me go ahead and just only select or show the saucer section. I went ahead and did kind of a hybrid of both adding in extra edge loops to kind of help, and I was saying, clean up or smooth out, but actually sharpen a lot of the edges, and also did the Control E solution as well. However, though, I mean, as we can see here, there's a couple of still little issues that we have going on, which I will eventually fix once I go ahead and apply the subdivision surface modifier onto it. But I'm pretty much happy. I also went ahead and cut out the back area here where the um, where the impulse engines are going to be at. But before I do that, I am going to also, actually, I'm going to go ahead and apply that modifier now. So, and that's what the finished mesh looks like. I'm going to have some cleaning up that I'm going to have to go through and do, but I'll do that in between the episodes. But before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and need to do this. I decided I'm going to go ahead and separate the upper portion and this lower portion of the saucer section into two separate meshes, because I'm going to work with one at a time. Because this bottom mesh, I'm going to eventually have to blend in with this piece here. So they're all one big piece. So rather than do work down here and possibly mess up this top piece here, I'm going to separate these two. So let's go ahead and go back in here real quick. Oops, wrong one. Edit. I'm going to select this center piece and do Control plus to select vertices going outward. Let's see. All right, what I went ahead and decided to do is I just flipped it around on the back side, made sure that this hide or disabled to where the mesh is see-through, and I'm just going to do it this way. This would be just a lot quicker than me trying to go in and select all of those. And it should give me the result that I am wanting. Let's take a quick little look. A couple little vertices did get picked that I don't want to pick, but no problem. Oh, something happened there. I'll fix that in a minute. So anyways, but yeah, once I plan on doing, yeah, let me select all those. Doing this. Next step is to start working on the grid lines, which one thing about the newer ships that was seen in First Contact, except for the Enterprise E, is that there wasn't really any kind of definitive grid lines on the saucer sections or even on the ship itself. What I mean by the grid lines is that, branching out from a central location, there was a definitive, you know, rectangular grids that branched out from there, and then they had continued grid lines going through here, and which you kind of you see that on the vessels, but these type of ships really don't have that. So, it kind of goes with more of like irregular panel designs. So, I'm going to have to think of about, do I want to try to keep that for this type of ship, which more than likely I probably will, or do I want to go with more traditional grid lines? But more than likely I'm probably going to just go ahead and go with the more irregular type panels, because that's what you see on screen, and I want to try to make this somewhat canonical as much as possible, except for a few little you know differences, which once again I kind of explained in earlier episodes, irregularities in the model um, that are inherent to it being such a low poly, even though that this was seen, quote unquote on screen, or not quote unquote, it was seen on screen. There was no quote unquote on screen. Um, but there were the differences on that. Um, discrepancies between models and stuff like between models that you would see, because it was a different model that was seen on screen at first contact as opposed to what was seen on DS9. So let me go ahead and separate that. And there we go. Now we have this bottom portion, which is a separate piece from this top portion, so I can work on this separately. But anyways, as I was saying, what you see on first contact was one model was the first model of the ship, and then if I remember correctly, hearing about it is that when it went over to DS9, when the ship was seen on DS9, there was I know what happened here. Okay, this is easy to fix. Um, why isn't clipping on? Thought I had it on. That's probably what's going on here. There we go. But yeah, when it went on DS9, they looked at the ship and they realized that they are going to have to kind of do some modifications on it, because it was such a low poly model. So I think and I'm not 100% positive on this, I think this is just what I heard, but they went ahead and um, almost started from scratch really with the model. So there was a few differences on it. So you're going to see some discrepancies between what was seen on first contact and what was seen on DS9. Um, so I'm trying to take kind of the um, well, what am I thinking here? What am I thinking here? I'm Most of the references is actually from the actual studio model, which was seen on first contact, but there are some ideas that I'm stealing from from game models and from the model that was on DS9. So let's see. So let's go ahead and move right along. I think probably the next part that I'll do, because it'll probably be the easiest for me to do, is that there is on this ship, like with all other ships, kind of a sensor grid within the saucer section. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's choose a series of um, yeah, this looks like they'd be pretty good. Let's go ahead and select this ring here. I think that's the same ring. Probably be a little bit there in the back. Now let's see, where do I want to stop this at? I'm looking at the picture. It looks like it goes all the way around. Yeah, all the way to that little cutout section of where the yeah, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit of, well, actually no, I think I can do this. I think we can swing this. Let's go ahead and extrude this. Oops, can't see what I'm doing. Extrude and bring that all in. There we go. And as far as this is concerned, we're going to do a little bit of magic here. Alt M at last, Alt M at last, and let's go ahead and delete that face because we won't need that anymore. And let's take a look at the other side, see how that looks. Okay, I think that will work. Let's go ahead and do the same thing into this section here. Ooh, okay, there's a little issue there. I got to go ahead and fix. No big deal. There we go. And so I'm going to go through off screen and kind of clear up because we do have some unnecessary edge loops. And that's the deal that you encounter when you do subdivision surface modifiers. But, oh, anyways, it's not that big of a deal to deal with. Whoops. There we go. And let's bring this up over here. Bring that in. I should really try to keep this consistent when I do this and use my number keys, but um, okay. Now let's fix that, do that, and select, delete only faces, and oops, let's go ahead and delete that edge. Let me check that other. There we go. Let's check the front to make sure there's no edge there either. Oh, there is one. Let's delete that. And there is the sensor ring. So, with that, let's go ahead and what else do we want to work on next? Let's take a look at the top. All right, I decided I know what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and stop the episode right here because I need to go in and kind of start cleaning up this mesh before I work on it any further because I'm going to go ahead and start working on the primary hull details. When we talk about those grid lines, I'm going to be trying to work on that. So we go in through here, we can see like here is a hull plate. Here's another little, hull plate, all these irregular hull plates. I'm going to start trying to work on those. Before I could do that, I'm going to have to kind of clean up this mesh. So let me do that a bit off camera and try to get it all nice and organized because it's a bit of an organized mess. One thing once again, I know I've mentioned it before that I don't like about subdivision surface modifier, but it's kind of an unnecessary evil within Blender at least. Maybe one day they might probably come up with something a little bit better, or there might be something better out there that I'm not aware of. I had to probably look into that. But until then, I just want to say thank y'all for watching. If y'all have any comments, suggestions, or questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I read all your comments and everything, and I try to do the best I can to respond to any questions that y'all might probably have. I'm going to try to do a bit of a better job on that. But next episode we'll go ahead and we'll tackle those grid lines. I'm also going to be working on off screen some of the additional details at the bottom of the hull. As you can see, I've already kind of started working on a few of those as well. So yeah. So once again, thank you all for watching. This is B-Belt Dan, and I will see you in the next episode.